everyone. Good evening. How are you? It's a moist evening, is it not? It's a soft evening, thank God. You're very welcome to Nelly's Café. It's great to have you all here. Although when I look up like this, I'm wearing my reading glasses, so it's all blurry. Can't see a thing. But you're all very welcome. My name's Oran Ryan, and on behalf of the Limerick Writers' Centre, I'd like to welcome you all to the second of many evenings of the Poetry Circle, which is a very cool idea. It's a new series brought to you by the Limerick Writers' Centre. The series is called The Poetry Circle in honour of the great Limerick poet Des O'Grady, who first formed and read his work at reading, also called the Poetry Circle, in 1954 at the White House Bar on O'Connell Street here in Limerick. We have super poetry from super poets this evening. We have Tim Cunningham, and we have Richard Halperin, and we have music from the magnificent Broken Chord. And we will be starting the evening with a song from Broken Chord. I'll give you a brief introduction to them. And following them, the wonderful poet Tim Cunningham will perform for us. So, to start off, Broken Chord, right over there, is the newly formed musical collaboration of Stuart Bond and Sarah Croker.
Used to be 3-4-3.
Stop that now. Stop that. I'll be over to you in a second. This folksy duo are no strangers to the stage in their own right, and together their blended voices are entwined in a delicate spell binding harmony. Limerick man Bond, I'll make no jokes, rose to fame locally with his participation in season 4 of The Voice of Ireland. His musical career spans over 20 years, and he's featured in a number of Limerick bands playing drums and guitar and singing. Croker is a native of Tipperary. I come from the Tipperary part myself, and has toured throughout Europe and the US. She will join a host nationally renowned artists in Dolan's Warehouse as part of the upcoming I Heart Cranberries tribute. Is that gone?
It's just gone. Yeah.
It's just gone. She did do that, by the way, and it was awesome. Very awesome. Okay, we're starting off with a song called Drenched to the Bone, which is not at all apt this evening. Very fitting. Go for it.
Great. So this song, Drenched to the Bone, it's a song about when you face challenges in life and how people deal with situations, people in your family and your friends and all that, how they all deal with things differently.
Hit the ground with thunder and sound. People all around the upside down. I can see my vision is blurred. And I woke in a hospital bed, dragging stitches in my head. Took me by surprise when an old man said, "Are you alone? Are you coming home? He lost something, a precious stone. Are you alone? Are you coming home? He lost something, a precious stone." Well, I'm drenched to the bone, and I'm on my knees, and I pray to the Lord that I find the peace. Simple scar inside of my head. A brother laughed and a sister cried. A father sighed and a mother died. Took me by surprise. No man said, "Are you alone? Are you coming home? I hear you've lost something, precious stone. Are you alone? Are you coming home? He lost something, precious stone." My head is clear and I wear new skin, and every now and then I get to wondering, you're up there all alone when the angels sing. Are you alone? Are you coming home? I hear you lost something, precious stone. Are you alone? Have you lost control? No one can touch you here. Take it from me, I've seen it. Oh, la 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 la. La 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 la.
Awesome. Now, next up we have Mr. Tim Cunningham. Born in Limerick. He's worked mainly in education in Dublin, London, Delaware and Essex. Tim has 6 collections published. Don Marcelino's Daughter, Unequal Thirds, Kyrie, Siege, Almost Memories, Lyrics to the Nightingale Song, which is Revival Press 2016. This coincides with the centenary of his father's birth in 1916. And a new collection, Feathers, is forthcoming from Revival Press. And Tim was awarded a Kavanagh Fellowship in 2012. Beg your pardon. So I give you Tim Cunningham.
When people sometimes ask, are you nervous? Pure coincidence. First poem is called Butterflies. Butterflies. Today, I will write a beautiful poem. The meadow is dancing to the music of 1,000 birds. The bees are humming to improve their resonance in time for noon's concert, and every flower is wearing the most exquisite petals. My words will be butterflies, not pinned to a board, but gypsy-free, flinging their wings in colourful abandon. The sun has even promised not to cast the lightest shadow on my page. Yes, today I will write a beautiful poem. I can feel it in my pen. The next poem I wrote after that was actually for somebody who is homeless and having an epileptic fit in O'Connell Street. Wipe your feet. At UCD they have got an archive there, and they had an exhibition, and they were part of Kavanagh, and I was thinking of 3 of the better known Irish poets. And from Under Milk Wood I have this lovely line from Mrs. Ogmore Pritchard, who's a bit fussy, and she says, "And before you let the sun in, mind it wipes its shoes." They strode across their world of letters, stepping stones to Olympus. By their shoes you shall know them. Yeats's metrical polish, rhyming shine, stepping from Benbulben to London, to Ballydee's winding stairs. Kavanagh, bringing vision and the dust of famine roads from Inniskeen to MacDaid's and the banks of the Grand Canal. Healy, digging stanzas with his pen, shaping drills and furrows from Mossbawn to Harvard's New World. We recognize their steps, each one advancing poetry, and each as individual as a friend approaching the front door. Even Mrs. Ogmore Pritchard would not dare tell them to wipe their feet. A summer romance. When I was 6, I spent a week or two in a place called Balnahan in Newcastle West, where my father had grown up, and it made a big impression. And I always hate people saying things like bog standard. Have they ever seen the beauty in a bog? Anyway, summer romance. I loved you with a passion in the summer of 48. That sepia patch beyond the cottage. I had never seen a bog before, and it was love at first sight. Indelible those lawns of sphagnum moss, reels and jigs of rush and meadow thistle, a spider's stainless steel bridging bog cotton and asphodel, the sundew's heliports. Memory still inhales bog myrtle, listens for the plover's golden splash, stares at the San Martin's tunnels, the emperor moth basking on heather sprigs, and nymphs of the emerald damselfly below the water skin, crouches before the pipit's mottled eggs, that little bird confiding all the secrets of place. I imagine torques, chalices and ciboria, bedfellows with Viking axe and spear, and the ghost of the great elk striding majestic from the mist. Now that you are fading from the map, and the thief in the night is lifting the downstairs window, let us correspond. Pen loves vocabulary. Break's edge, bog beam, lady's smock. And then somebody on my father's side. William. Pimpernel William, where are you? Your mother sought you everywhere. All that I heard of you is that one morning the bed was empty and you never came home. All that I saw of you was through the relentless tears of your mother's eyes, visualizing her lost child swaddled in newspaper under some London bridge or lying in blood outside a Saturday pub with no Samaritan passing by. The sun whose laughter had exorcised the darkness from her winter nights. Now, long dead, she never blamed you for stealing the music and the light, and leaving her heart empty as your bed, but climbed the hilltop every day, scanning the distance for a glimpse of her prodigal boy, and prayed each day, each night, for every missing William's safe return, and every William's mother keeping vigil on a hill. I mentioned this place, Balnahan. I had an uncle, Uncle Tom. It turned out he wasn't quite an uncle, a bit more complicated. But he was 18, a really powerful young guy, full of energy on this tiny little farm. And you can imagine the frustration. It was very, very poor at that time. Most of them, all my uncles said they couldn't wait to get out and work and so on. But there wasn't anything really that would keep them, working and satisfied and achieve any kind of ambition. They felt, where they were. It's called Pizzicato. I remember he was playing the violin. I met him first when I was 6 and he a seasoned 17. One foot supported on a chair, he played the violin in a country kitchen. Hair frantic as leaves in a storm, supple body sound as a maple, pegs fractionally overwound. In the fields he held spade, fork and scythe, like a Pernambuco and horsehair bow in the hand of a maestro. We met again when his mother died. Blotched and bloated, a diseased tree, he leant, topmost limbs degenerating, a definite bleeding of sap, taproot almost severed, fungus itching under his bark. At his own funeral, observing the coffin's polished pine, I recalled the violin soundpost, the part the French call soul, and how the gut had snapped when plucked pizzicato. There's a tree near where I live, an absolutely beautiful tree, and they've gone and lobotomized the thing. They've ruined it. And when I saw it like that, it was just like sacrilege. And my sister, who died just over a year back, they put her on what they call life support, and it was like seeing a monster in the bed. It's called Once Were Beautiful. In the beauty pageant of trees, you were the undisputed queen, standing tall at the junction of Hillside Road and Chantry Way, naked in winter, emerald green in summer, but at your immaculate best for that single week in April, your symmetrical sphere of branches tipped with confetti blossom. I imagine Constable painting you in oils. My sister too was beautiful, a child of grace with as many friends as a tree has leaves, at every age irradiating joy, dispensing spring blossoms of happiness, whatever the season, sharing her sunshine like flowers from a basket. Even when autumn shed her leaves, hers was the perfect skeleton of branches. I imagine Giotto chose the colours for her soul. But you have been defaced, and worse. They amputated your lower limbs, lobotomized your topmost branches, as my sister at the junction of life and death, and lost in the forest of a hospital bed, was monstered with life support. I imagine Goya under the darkest cloud, brush in hand, at the foot of the tree, at the foot of the bed. Semitone. This is about her as well. This morning's lark is a semitone off key, the lark that trilled the valley, calling her to play. The leaves on the tree seem reluctant green, the chestnut tree where her rope swing pendulum between heaven and earth, and the street is cowled in silence, the street where she was queen of hopscotch, spinning tops and peppers. The birds, the trees, the street. How do they know that today she will not be coming out to play? Odd job words. The little words we don't take much notice of. These are the odd job words, the polyfilla and alloy words that never win the prizes, are never the stars, never see their letters in lights, but are indispensable as spokes in a bicycle wheel, rivets on the Titanic. In Rome of the legions and centurions, they would have been the hewers of wood and drawers of water. On building sites, hod carriers. On ocean liners, the cabin boys. Kitchen maids in a fairy tale palace. Words like to and and the, as in to the front in a field hospital when the telegram arrived. How am I for time? Oh, okay. It must be great having said that. Okay, so something a bit more cheerful. That wouldn't be difficult, would it? The medication blues. When you get a splitting headache, deciding what to take for headaches, you've got the medication blues. When the tablet for the heart thins the stomach's lining, you've got the medication blues. When you can't find your inhaler and you're halfway up the hill, you've got the medication blues. When the recommended statin brings you out in a rash, you've got the medicated blues. When you're stranded at the airport and your pills have just run out, you've got the medication blues. When what's bad for the arthritis nourishes the bones, you've got the medication blues. When the insulin jab means no chocolate or cake, you've got the medication blues. When the dose of pinkish tonic means you must bypass the pub, you've got the medication blues. Whenever you choose between the pain and the frustration, you've got the medication blues. But now comes the extraordinary news that there's even medication for the medication blues. Have I got time for 4? You sure? Okay, thanks. Okay, I used to serve masses in Michael's Church, and when I come back, I always stay at the Old Quarter Lodge. They mustn't hear me say that. It's supposed to be the boutique hotel now on Denmark Street. I feel I'm going to buy a dress, boutique hotel. And next is St. Michael's Church. And one day, I was there one day, for me an extraordinary experience, that a crowd of bikers come along and they vroom, vroom, vroom outside the church. It turned out that one of them, not one of them who were there going around the church, but one of the group, had died, and they were there for a mass called Requiem for a Biker. And they had somebody there who sang, and she was absolutely brilliant. Echo of Yeats here. How do you tell the biker from the bike? They drove up Denmark Street like Brando and the Wild Ones, helmeted, leather-clad, engines purring between thighs, then leaned into the church car park. They had come to pray. How their friend died, I never found out, but think it was abrupt. Clustered in centre and side aisles, they packed St. Michael's, voices fervent as solemn monks, and the lady biker's Ave Maria would have graced the Met. Then back on the saddles, circling, silver exhaust bright as Galahad armour. Finally the cortege, a guard of honour behind the hearse, heaven's angels leading him into paradise. Bikes purred and roared, no apologies for the noise. What biker prays for eternal rest? Beethoven would have heard, scored a biker requiem in a full throttle major key. It's an amazing experience, really. Yeah. It's the expectations. Failing the screen test, Ireland is, I suppose, largely becoming secularised. But anybody asks me my religion or whatever, what do I believe? I say I'm Irish Catholic by culture. And you can make with the like of that. Failing the screen test. He looked perfect for the part. Horned helmet, Herculean physique, arms that made axe and sword seem light as plastic toys, a beard fit for an eagle's nest. Easy to imagine him scything forth like an apocalyptic storm, raping, pillaging and laying waste. So why did the director called cut? Why could the actor not cut it when his sword refused to slash through monks and nuns in the monastery scene? And why could he not follow the script and desecrate the altar, sack monstrance, chalices and ciboria, smash the statues to smithereens? A modern man, sophisticated, a man long escaped the shackles of superstition and religion, what force held back his arm? It was not as if some special effects had conjured a vision of his sister, innocent in her first communion dress, or his aunt soprano leading the May procession, pouring her soul into the Ave Maria and Hail Queen of Heaven. Not even his mother crossing herself, dipping her fingers in a font of tears at news of the accident, sudden as Viking sails appearing from the mist. This is the second last one. Okay, that's called oratory. When I had a stroke 6 or 7 years back, and after that I wrote sort of one poem. I wasn't sure if didn't know if I'd be able to write at all. And I said, I've got to face this. So I woke up at 6:10 in the morning in hospital and wrote a poem. And it was actually okay. It was published in an English magazine called Acumen. So that was encouraging. Next poem I wrote, because that one I said, now I've got to write something, what do I do? So I went back to absolute basics and beginnings. So the next one I said, well, write one of my own now. And it was a poem about silence. And this, in a way, is a kind of a twin to that. silent. It's called oratory. Orators, how their voices resonate. Cicero, Martin Luther King, any two redemptorists in Mission Week. A world of decibels away from the oratory's elected silence, where words softer than an angel's whispered in a young girl's ear evolve, take shape, blend with thought to revelation, morning's mist lifting from the meadow. A sanctuary lamp flickers before the tabernacle, its tongue eloquent with silence. You've all heard of the Forward Prize for Poetry. I'm going to, or Dominic actually is going to inaugurate the Omega Prize, yes? The Omega Prize. The Forward, they make a big deal of the first book especially. So the Omega Prize is the prize for your last book. But it's complicated. How do you know it's your last book and so on? So they have rules, and so these are the rules. To complement our successful Alpha Prize for first collection, we are pleased to invite submissions for our inaugural Omega Prize, awarded for a last collection. To be eligible to enter, you must have published at least one previous book of poetry, and your entry must absolutely be your last. Last, of course, implies there was a first, and your submission cannot be considered for both first and last. As selected does not qualify. Entrants are advised that titles like residues, remainders, or etc. send out the wrong message. We expect swan songs, late flowerings of imagination and style. The rules are stringent. If your selection is adjudged the winner, but you publish a later work, your prize will be rescinded and appropriate action considered. If you pass away before the award is decided, your entry will automatically be void. But if you should pass away after you are announced the winner, you will be pleased to know that the prize will be awarded posthumously. What a wonderful memento mori that would be for your family and friends. And if you are already the recipient of the Alpha Prize, think what wonderful bookends to a life in poetry. Presentation of the award, followed by book launch, will take place on the 1st of March in the crypt of St. David's, patron saint of poetry. We hope to see some of you there. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Tim. That was wonderful. Very, very enjoyable. Before I go any further, could I just ask if you have phone, could you put your phone on silent? Or just, my phone just made a noise and I just realised I didn't tell anyone else stuff there. So, now, our next song from is called Couldn't See It Through. Am I right?
I'm incidental to myself. Remember, I was proud. Used to talk out loud, but I gave that up for you. You couldn't see it through. You couldn't see it through. Oh, but that was up to you. I couldn't see it through. It was up to you. I'm
Talking to myself.
I think there's someone listening.
They say I'm making sense.
Are you listening to me? Am I back in prayer? sentence. Did you want to see it through? Was it up to you? Did you want to see it through? Was it up to you? Oh, there isn't any blame.
Nothing to excuse.
None of us are made.
None of us confused.
Oh, there isn't any shame. Nothing left to lose. You couldn't see it through. It was never up to you. Oh, you couldn't see it through. It was never up to you. There's no way to bring this back home. We've gone all along. You couldn't see it through. It was never up to you. Oh, you couldn't see it through. It was never up to you. Oh, you couldn't see it through. It was never up to you. You couldn't see it through. It was never up to you. You couldn't see it through.
You rock.
Thank you.
Our next artist is Richard W. Halperin, who has Irish-US dual nationality. His poetry has been widely published in Ireland and the UK, and the poem Snow Falling, Lady Murasaki Watching is on permanent display in the foyer of the Hawkswell Hotel Theatre in Sligo. He's had 3 collections published by Salmon Poetry. The most recent is Quiet in a Quiet House, which is in 2016. He's had 6 chapbooks published by Lapwing Belfast, and his most recent is Prisons, in January 2017. So it's with great pleasure, Richard Halperin.
Thank you, Oran. Thank you, Dominic. Thank you, wherever you are, Nelly. And this is the 4th collection of Salmon, and this is the 8th collection of Lapwing, and they're debuted here in Flagrante. I'll read 10 minutes from each, and we'll just start a book bingo. That we may all aim at the 3rd chin. That we may all go on. That we may cry with reason. That we may know why we cry. That we may be happy in the interstices. That we may know wonder at small things and leave large things to destroy themselves. That we may not curse having been born. That we may not curse having been born to die, that we may want to go on, that we may love those who do not want to go on, that we may all go on. In 1928, my parents were alive, but I was not. I was invisible. They did not know each other. Each was young and full of hope. When I arrived, that was already not the case. 1928 is a world I cannot picture. Nothing can make it real for me. Some were very old, then dead. Some were being born. Heads of state now in history books or become statues or pictures on stamps were real, ate toast, did, some of them, terrible things to people who were also alive. In short, a world rolling out of the ball of yarn no one can see. In 1928, my mother was, I think, pretty and lively. My father was, I think, full of jokes. There they were. There they are. This very night in my chair, I could tell them what was going to happen to them. I have the key to the lock of 1928. I could whisper it to them, one or two things in the middle of the day they were having, and they would hear it. But I shall not. Gratuitous, devastating pain. There they are, so lovely. That will never happen to me, each thinks. I do whisper something. You are right, my dears. That will never happen to you. That can never happen to you. No, never. Never. I'm glad to do it. What's the harm? The beach, Malahide. The sea green and grey that day. She told me 2 or 3 frightening things which had happened to her over the years, and one sad thing. I do not know if the sea helped, or if I helped, but something got transferred. Later, over tea, she said, now you know. The middle of any story is always missing. Little boy blue becomes old man blue. Fin d'histoire. Hateful things. I'm reading a list of them in a book written by Sai Sho Nagon 1,000 years ago. They're not hateful. They're charming because of her writing. Is that all? Time washed over them like water. Anger's stones smoothed. Time clears. Is there need for forgiveness? I do not know if near the end she forgave. Near the end, everything dissolves. Small stones, charmingly arranged, are better than blood for certain things. Is God water? Are the great they, watchers and at times interferers, merciful or simply fastidious? The lady in blue, the howl, the peace, Eliot was on to something. He also now quite washed away, except for some divine traces which help as the rope is slowly pulled out of one's hands. What then of hateful things? Quite small anyway. Water already beginning to polish them. A charming woman writes, in a palace barely there, even when it was there, against the seasons and a few distant stars, neatly described. Atrocities seem only a mild annoyance. A writer has given us with her ink and brush something with which to get through Tuesday. Now a little change in vibe, a real shorty. Birds. There is a small New England town in which people pay back their debts in birds. Birds crying circled Golgotha. Painters seldom include them. Berkeley was a bird. I think, therefore I think I am. When I was a child in the Midwest, many families had servants. Not one of them was a bird. It doesn't feel like happiness. It doesn't, by the way, people ask, did you want to write blah, blah, blah. The poem arrives and your job is not to screw it up. That's it. It doesn't feel like happiness. It doesn't feel like happiness, but it is happiness. There is not the joy in the gut, the glow. One isn't radiant. Chekhov called The Cherry Orchard a comedy. That is close, that is it. Dead things stay dead. Here. Loveliness is spoiled. Here. Sadness permeates. To be permeated is close to happiness. To be breathing in rooms, in circles of chairs, in the unfolding of a day, to befriend circles, to be in a clean bed, single or double, alone or not, one's psychoses accepted, to be out of oneself long enough to hear birds among themselves. Half your life is broken off, or all of it, and here you still are. One day a feeling which isn't misery. It doesn't feel like happiness, but it is happiness. Words are the wrong clothes for such things. Foreigner in a foreign town. The first time you realize, usually in your teens, that you were born with a gift or born with a curse, both the same as concerns their effect, you are a foreigner in a foreign town. Welcome to day one, your little room in hot hell. Shutters to manipulate the breeze. A little silver-loaded gun shoved under the cot after one failed try. A Bible or other book in a corner which the breeze avoids or doesn't. Esther, Jesus, Camus, Lana Turner, the little boy, the little girl down the street who skates without skates, whom no one can look at quite directly. Foreigners in a foreign town. A little room to risk leaving or to risk inviting guests to. Tumbleweeds and constellations blowing about the floor. I have walked the Dublin port. I have seen the great barges barge. I have seen the undersides of tankers obscenely suspended on giant cranes. What was never meant to be shown, the so what of the different. Now it's time. 10 minutes. For this 3-poem sequences, the 2 books were to come out 6 months apart, but they didn't. And for this, in a way, the star is the back cover. On a quiet afternoon in November 2017, as I was reading Arthur Waley's 170 Chinese poems and C.P. Stewart's The Lane, the poem Evening Prayer came to me entire, and I knew there was a book in it. 2 weeks later it was finished, 33 short poems on the cusp of prayer, or in prayer if there is a difference. Around Christmas, Midlands arrived. As I was reading Terry Murray's Under the Linnet's Wing, then this month a 3rd sequence of poems came unexpectedly from the original inspirations. To be anywhere near the company of Waley and Stewart, and of Terry Murray, to whom this book is dedicated, is my highest hope for this work, which would never have come to be without their beautiful poetry. So, evening prayer. Maybe as in school, well, how long is it going to be? It's going to be this long. The job is finishing up. The stars are settling in. There is sound but no noise as things take their place. No mess, please, for others to clean up. Only recently I have tried something new, to break each fear as if it were a ligament, without rancor. Fear has its job. I have mine. Through the window, faces from the past gathering? No. They are in the room. I had been expecting astonishment, not this. A cognac or a cup of tea and a wedge of wedding cake, yes, that would be good. I once asked my friend David Wales, a long time ago now, what he wanted me to pray for him. That the work be fulfilling, he said. What prayer do you pray for me, I asked. Protection, I answered. Sometimes I think we switch prayers. They are no different from thinking anyway, coining conversations. A day like any other. This day is all I have, so it is like any other. It is not yesterday, so it is unlike any other. I go forward because I cannot go back even 1 hour. Damage, I think, is infinite, including mine. When two hands come together to pray, something of rupture heals. I cannot say what. An inarticulate solace, words, except mercy, can be entirely dispensed with. They have done enough damage anyway. The eyes of a dog or of a horse are better than words. They are part of a day like any other, as the book of Job is part of a day like any other. Two hands coming together. I know too much about the fields of peace. The fields of peace are in that direction. The fields of madness are in that direction. The fields of madness are everywhere. I walk in them all the time. The ones in me, the ones outside me. I know too much about the fields of peace. Sometimes I walk in them, but to remember them here is almost an illness. A red flower helped me once. I do not know which fields it came from. Now we'll go to the one that, well, there's a bar here, so I'll read this one. The Pier. I cried for death, but it would not come. I cried for breath, but it had no name. I cried for peace, but peace cracked. I couldn't get off the pier. I asked I, but there was no I. I asked you, but you weren't. I asked the great they, but they went their way. I asked the Sphinx, and she said, go down to the pub and lift the glass to me and throw it hard at the mirror. Back the silver mess is a black pane. On it is written, your right real name. When you see it, you will recall it. And when you recall it rightly, you'll know the way home. Midlands, that's the second sequence. Midlands. A young lady leaves a book, serious poems, behind her. She goes into a forest. I do not know where she is going. Do you want your book? I ask. No, she says. Do you want me? I ask. I do, she says. Serious and not serious are better. I myself wrote a poem once, I say, but words sank it. I saw it sink in the multiform fen walk. Red leaves everywhere. Whistle it, she said. Autumn's the time for whistling. Second poem in this. If I break a poem in two, I think of extraordinary poems. C.P. Stewart's Goat, Paul T. Dillon's Thirst, Terry Murray's To Me Fella, A Letter, others of that ilk. So many since childhood. I think of the Book of John. If I break a poem in two, it becomes two poems. The one the poet meant, and the one the reader reads. Bread, after all. I think there's time for two more shorties. Oh, all right, I love that.
It's not the poetry.
It's fine. Song and strings strumming. It starts with a quote. A pain had stabbed my heart, which is an excerpt from On Hearing Someone Sing a Poem by Yuan Chen, by Po Chu E, translated Arthur Whaley. Pain had stabbed my heart. Pain had stabbed his heart. Where does that pain come from? It comes from love. These things cannot be analyzed. These things cannot be spoken of. It comes from experience. It comes from things he could not help. It comes from things I...
Thank you, Richard. Thank you, Tim. I'd just like to draw your attention to this table here, filled as it is with magnificent works. You have heard them this evening. You know how good they are. I suggest you look at these books carefully and consider purchasing one or maybe two.
That's code for money.
Show them the money. That's the hint.
It's code for please support Dominic.
Okay. The wonderful Broken Chord, who has given us so much beautiful music this evening, is going to give us yet another song called Eggshells. Am I correct in that?
Correct, yeah.
Guys, as they say, take it away, Goldie. alas, alack, we've come to the end of our evening, the Limerick, the Poetry Circle. Just like to thank everybody who performed, Tim, Richard, and Stuart and Sarah from the Broken Chord. I refer you to the Limerick Writers' Centre website for all future events. Keep your eye on them. And before I say something wrong, Dominic's looking at me. He's giving me that look again, so I'm going to get off the stage quickly. Thank you very much, everyone. It's lovely having you all. Take care.